He signed the H.R. 133, an act making consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending the 30th of September 2021, providing coronavirus emergency response and relief and for other purposes. The entire $2.3 trillion omnibus spending bill, which funds the government through September of next year, passed both chambers of Congress on Monday night with overwhelming support. The $900 billion coronavirus relief bill the portion of the bill includes $600 stimulus checks, extends 2 federal unemployed programs, provides an additional $300 in weekly jobless benefits, and adds another round of the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses. Democrats in the U.S. Congress on Monday will try to push today through expanded $2,000 pandemic relief payments for Americans after President Trump backed down from a fight with lawmakers that could have shut down the federal government. Authorities have identified Anthony Quinn Warner as the Nashville bomber after matching his DNA to remains found at the scene of the explosion. DNA taken from the scene was matched to Warner by forensic analysts. The 63-year-old of nearby Antioch, Tennessee, had already been identified as a person of interest in the explosion of the recreational vehicle in downtown Nashville on Christmas morning. The man believed to be responsible for this bombing that tore through downtown Nashville blew himself up in the explosion and appears to have acted alone, with federal officials having identified the man believed to be behind this Christmas Day bombing. Authorities now turn to the monumental task of piecing together the motive behind the explosion that severely damaged dozens of downtown buildings and injured 3 people. The world has surpassed 80 million cases, and the United States death toll has surpassed 330,000, means about 1 in 1,000 Americans have died of COVID-19. Florida became the 3rd state in the country to hit the 1 million COVID cases when it passed the staggering mark early this month. In doing so, the country's 3rd biggest state, with a population of 21.9 million, has joined Texas and California as the worst affected states in the United States. Former Food and Drug Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said today that the new, possibly more transmissible coronavirus variant first identified in the UK is probably already in the United States in low numbers, especially since it's been detected in Canada, Japan, Australia, Singapore, and several European countries. Workers installed 192 glittering Waterford crystals triangles on Times Square's New Year's Eve ball in preparation for a pandemic-limited celebration that will lack the usual tightly packed crowds of revelers. The ball of a 12-foot geodesic sphere covered with 2,688 crystal triangles of various sizes. Some new crystals are swapped in every year, and this year's edition features a new gift of happiness design represented by a sunburst of bright cuts radiating outwards. At least 11 hikers died over the weekend in the mountain range north of Tehran when a series of avalanches were triggered by blizzards and heavy snowfall, according to Iran's Red Crescent Rescue Group. And the next round of negotiations between the Taliban and the Afghan government would be held in Qatar from next month, despite President Ashraf Ghani's recent calls for them to be moved home. Saudi Arabia's Interior Ministry extended a ban on entry to the kingdom by air, land and sea for another week amid concerns over the fast-spreading variant of the new coronavirus. And Azerbaijan's Defense Ministry has said today its army units have been attacked by an illegal Armenian armed group in Nagorno-Karabakh, killing an Azerbaijani serviceman and wounding another. In a sign of the changing political fortunes of a man who was once a pariah, Eritrea's president has proven to be a staunch ally of Ethiopia's Nobel Peace Prize winner and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, giving his troops much-needed support to fight the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Sudan has taken control of most of the land it accuses Ethiopians of encroaching upon near the border between the two countries. And the leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah said his group now has twice as many precision-guided missiles as it had a year ago, saying Israel's efforts to prevent it from acquiring them have failed. Egyptian diplomats and intelligence officials arrived in the Libyan capital of Tripoli, the most senior Egyptian delegation to visit the western part of the conflict-stricken country in years. And people in the Central African Republic have voted in an election overshadowed by violence between government and rebel forces. South Africa has become the first country on the continent to register more than 1 million COVID-19 cases. And a Russian fishing trawler sank this morning in the northern Barents Sea, and 17 of its crew are still missing. 2 other crew members have been rescued. NATO says that Russian military activity in the alliance's airspace increased slightly this year as its jets across Europe scrambled more than 400 times to escort or shadow unknown aircrafts. Russia's President Putin will receive the Sputnik vaccine against the coronavirus, and European Union nations officially kicked off a coordinated effort today to give COVID-19 vaccinations to some of the most vulnerable among their nearly 450 million people, marking a moment of hope in the continent's battle against the worst public health crisis in a century. The distribution of an initial 200 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Pfizer and BioNTech across the European Union will be completed by September. Pope Francis eschewing a customary post-Christmas public appearance from a Vatican palazzo overlooking St. Peter's Square to do his part in social distancing during this pandemic. And while corks may have popped in London and Brussels over the end to a 4-year saga known as Brexit, there is one rocky speck of British soil still left in limbo, and that is Gibraltar. A British colony jutting off the southern tip of Spain's mainland wasn't included in the Brexit trade deal announced on Christmas Eve between the European Union and the United Kingdom to reorganize the commercial and trade relations between the now 27-member bloc and the first nation to exit the group. First came the Brexit trade deal, and now comes the red tape and the institutional nitty-gritty. Brexit gives the UK the chance to do things a bit differently, and Rishi Sunak used his first interview in London since the Brexit deal was published to suggest the UK will diverge from the European Union in an attempt to lure businesses to London. 3 cases of a particularly infectious coronavirus variant that recently emerged in Britain have been confirmed in South Korea. And the star of the youngest sister of North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has risen so fast and high in the country's ruling firmament this year as to make her appear as a stand-in for her big brother, if not his rival, for power. That at 32, 4 years younger than Jong-un, Kim Yo-jongus made her presence known through shockingly tough statements that he had to have endorsed, but she clearly wrote and recommended. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. And Bangladesh will move a second group of Rohingya refugees to a low-lying island in the Bay of Bengal tomorrow, despite calls by rights groups to stop the relocation on safety grounds. More than 1,100 Rohingya refugees, members of a Muslim minority who have fled Myanmar, will be moved, and authorities moved the first batch earlier this month. A Chinese court has sentenced a citizen journalist to 4 years in prison today for her reports from Wuhan during the early stages of the coronavirus outbreak, and authorities in Hong Kong may have hoped to start 2020 by putting a turbulent period of sustained, often violent protests behind them. Instead, hundreds of thousands of protesters ushered in the new year by taking to the streets, around 400 arrested as protesters continued their push for political reform on the densely populated island. And a team of senior officials of the Communist Party of China landed yesterday, continuing their interactions with leaders of the Nepal Communist Party today in an effort to broker peace between the two rival factions of the ruling party in Kathmandu. President Trump has signed off on the legislation that reaffirms the right of Tibetans to choose a successor to the Dalai Lama, a move described by the Tibetan government in exile in Dharamsala, India, as a powerful message of hope and justice. Army Chief General Manoj Mukund Narwane kicked off a 3-day visit to South Korea to bolster military cooperation with the East Asian country. And Tesla will come to India early next year, according to the country's Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari. Congress has hit back at the BJP for mocking Rahul Gandhi's foreign visit as the party celebrated its 136th Foundation Day. Krishna district in Andhra Pradesh has done the first dry run in the country, and the process witnessed by senior district and state officials. And the dry run process included the possible adverse scenarios during and after administering the vaccine. India's daily COVID-19 fatality count has dropped to below 300 after over 6 months. And Delhi's borders with Haryana and Uttar Pradesh continue to remain closed at multiple points today because of the farmers' protest. It was a month ago on the 27th of November that a farmers' agitation against 3 new agricultural reform laws came knocking on Delhi's doors from Punjab and Haryana as farmers responded to the Delhi Chalo call. A month since, the agitation has swelled into a tent city at Singhu, a border area between Delhi and Haryana, and small demonstrations at the national capitals Tikri, Chilla and Ghazipur border points. The major farm unions protesting this set of agricultural reforms have agreed to restart negotiations with the government as cold conditions have persisted in the national capital, with the minimum temperature remaining below 5 degrees Celsius for the 4th consecutive day. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated India's first ever driverless train on Delhi Metro's Magenta line and launched National Common Mobility Card on the Airport Express line via video conferencing. Indian captain Virat Kohli has been one of the most prolific run-getters in international cricket since making his debut. The International Cricket Council today recognized his achievements by naming him the men's ODI cricketer of the decade. A depleted Indian attack ripped through Australia's top order to leave the world's #1 team with a slender 2-run lead and in deep trouble today after day 3 of the second test. The day belonged to Team India as they dominated the proceedings on day 3. India marching towards a dominant series-leveling victory after their formidable bowlers scythed through the Australian batting. We do have Not even a broken toe that could stop New Zealand's pace attack from dominating day 3 of the first test against Pakistan today. But the efforts to quickly wrap up the innings were stalled by a late century stand from Mohammad Rizwan and Fahim Ashraf at Mount Maunganai. And the Pakistan International Airlines announced it will resume commercial flights to Saudi Arabia today. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news.